Good morning. Welcome back to Venture Daily. On today's show, tech CEOs are no longer being shy about it. They're saying AI is coming for your job, my job, everyone's job, with predictions that 50% of white-collar workers will be replaced.
And after a failed attempt to block states from making their own AI laws, Washington is now under pressure to finally write national AI rules before America becomes a regulatory patchwork mess. I'm Josiah Simons.
I'm Jackson Fordyce. It's Monday, July 7th. Let's get you smarter before your first meeting. CEOs are starting to say it plainly. AI is going to eliminate a lot of white-collar jobs. Ford CEO Jim Farley predicts AI will replace literally half of all white-collar workers in the United States, echoing similar warnings from Amazon, JP Morgan, and Anthropic.
Executives are consolidating roles, freezing hiring, and using AI to streamline operations, sometimes cutting headcount by 10% or more. Fiverr's CEO told employees no job is safe, from designers to data scientists. And Shopify's CEO now requires managers to prove AI can't do a task before hiring someone.
And behind closed doors, many leaders are already planning for leaner workforces powered by AI and automation. Some, like OpenAI COO, argue the fears may be exaggerated, but others say the shift is already underway.
That's right. He says, we have yet to see any evidence that people are kind of wholesale replacing entry-level jobs. That's Chief Operating Officer Brad Lightcap from OpenAI. But even skeptics admit job displacement is inevitable as companies like IBM and AT&T quietly restructure around the tech. It's a wake-up call for anyone assuming AI won't reshape their career.
And for a deeper look on this story, I spoke with Rob Biederman.
Yeah, of course. Rob Biederman, managing partner, Asymmetric Capital Partners.
And for my first question for Rob, I asked him, CEOs from Ford to JP Morgan are now openly saying AI will wipe out millions of white-collar jobs. Are we finally past the sugarcoating phase, and what does that honestly signal about what's coming?
Look, I think that they are attempting to be transparent, and I certainly appreciate that. I would query whether that's actually true, if that's how it's going to pan out in reality. I think from time to time, technologies have always been discussed as a way that jobs are going to be destroyed. And yet it turns out the jobs are actually always net created, because what happens is the technology tends to take over things that are relatively lower on the kind of sophistication priority stack, and then workers just get pushed upwards. So I don't think we've ever seen a technology that ended up net destroying jobs. The reality is, a lot of call centers and other situations talk a lot about how, agents are going to take over. And the reality is, anytime you end up calling the airline and you need something that's really important, you're immediately going into an agent. So sure, it'll take over some parts, but I think what will actually happen is just humans will get continually pushed up the priority stack.
It's interesting. I feel like we hear two different stories competing at the same time constantly. So we've got like Rob and a lot of tech leaders are saying, AI is not going to take your job. In fact, It's going to make it easier to do your job. In fact, it's going to give you a new job. Lots of people. But then you've got these stories coming out, and now some tech CEOs are like saying the quiet part out loud. They're saying, no, AI is going to take your job, especially white-collar workers.
We're firing thousands and thousands of people every single day.
Microsoft, yeah.
A lot of the tech layoffs that we've seen, or the layoffs we've seen in journalism.
Yeah, so it's like, on one hand, we should be worried about our job. On the other hand, almost no companies are actually adopting and effectively using AI right now, it seems. I just watched a TikTok the other day of a guy saying, like, we are years out, not months out, from the companies that we typically work with every single day actually employing this tech in an effective way. So, it's just hard. It's like hard to parse it all out.
100%. And then Rob kind of goes into that a little bit further. My next question, but I asked him, but Fiverr CEO says that no role is safe, from designers to lawyers to finance. So I asked Rob, if that's true, is the workforce prepared for how fast this shift is actually moving?
I'd also say I think that's a little overblown. If it's things like take this design template and peanut butter it across an entire, suite of content, for sure. But the reality is when you use AI, I think a lot of the time you find that the things it creates are relatively formulaic or nonsensical, or just in other ways kind of like lack flair. So maybe I'm a troglodyte, maybe I'm a traditionalist, but the whole idea of AI just kind of rampantly destroying jobs everywhere, I guess I'm not yet a buyer of.
Well, it's like a push and pull. You get this really cool thing that happens in tech, like with ChatGPT, right? Everyone's immediately like, oh my gosh, all the jobs are going to be taken in some way. And then a couple months go by and they're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It'll help your work, actually. Then another thing comes out where your job's going to be taken. And so it's like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great headline. Like you 100%. See all these headlines of, it's thousands of people getting laid off. But I don't know a single person who's actually been laid off because of AI. So yeah, but that's just my personal experience. Sure. Maybe I don't actually know, but Yeah, but back in April, so we get this Shopify CEO saying no new hires. So Toby Lutke, I don't know. He told his employees the company won't approve new hires unless managers can approve AI can't do their job. Okay, so in a memo he said integrating AI into daily workflows is now a core expectation, and employees will be evaluated on their AI usage in performance reviews. So we're definitely getting CEOs like talking about this, and that's what our story is about today. Is
sure.
More and more CEOs seem to be saying this is coming. And I mean, the big question really is, when's the first AI CEO?
Exactly. I would love to hear his answer about an executive assistant. Those people can have all their work automated with email, with scheduling, etc.
Yeah, I mean,
but I'm sure he would rather have someone who's a person doing all of that versus some AI chatbot or some AI, agent doing.
You're saying the CEO himself?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at him. He's an interesting looking guy.
Nosferatu. We're going to cut that out.
No, we don't have to cut that out. That's great.
Sure. I mean, we're all big fans of Shopify. I'm on the Shopify app all day, every day, dude.
That's right.
My next question for Rob is around Shopify. I said, Shopify won't approve new hires unless managers can prove AI can't do the job. Are we entering an era where AI first becomes the default mindset for hiring?
Well, I think what's going on is let's take AI out of it. Look, America's tech companies and I think general companies are overstaffed. And I think they're overstaffed for reasons totally unrelated to AI, which was that during the pandemic, work became atomized. And, in the zero interest rate policy era, people hired aggressively. And so let's try to disaggregate the fact that companies have too many employees from AI is going to change everything. And so I believe, and maybe this is me being too cynical, a lot of we're going to shed jobs because of AI is just shedding jobs because they're, overstaffed in general. And so it's definitely the case that AI will take over some functions of that, and maybe we should make fewer hires, broadly speaking, as companies. But I think saying that story is simply because of AI is a little simplified.
He said it. We don't need 200 account managers for a company. We don't need 3,500 product managers. We don't need a content marketing team for this one product and then 10 others. Rob's saying it. Sorry, we hire too many people.
Two-man team here at Venture Daily.
Two-man team at Venture Daily.
We are an entire corporation.
We do have a giant overseas team in the Philippines and India and Pakistan.
Yeah, but they're not employees, so we don't count those.
What are they then?
Well, they're helpers. And you asked the final question to Rob?
Yeah, my final question to Rob. If CEOs are already planning to run companies with a fraction of today's headcount, are we looking at a future where AI doesn't just reshape work, but rewrites the entire social contract around employment?
Look, certainly I've been saying this since 2013, that the nature of work is changing. And we were doing that back in 2013 at Catalan, even before AI, saying that a lot of the way that jobs had been constructed was very much for kind of a legacy manufacturing 9-to-5 traditional model. It is the case that with or without AI, jobs should certainly be way more spontaneous, way more fit for purpose. And if AI can continue pushing us down that trajectory, I think that's actually really exciting and something to be kind of heralded and look forward to.
Thank you to Rob Biederman for being on the show today.
All right, Jackson, what do we got next?
Yeah, next story. A controversial push to ban state-level AI regulation just collapsed in the Senate after Senator Ted Cruz and allies failed to keep the provision in Trump's budget bill. The 99-1 vote to remove the moratorium has sparked new momentum for national AI rules, which advocates say are urgently needed to address privacy, safety, and IP concerns.
That's right. The failed ban would have blocked states from regulating AI in exchange for access to federal grants, but faced opposition from both sides of the aisle, 99-1. So there's one senator who voted in favor of that specific provision, including MAGA figures like Steve Bannon. With over 20 states already passing their own laws, the patchwork of rules is becoming harder to manage.
Polls show broad public support for a national AI standard, but Congress has long struggled to regulate tech.
Now, federal lawmakers may try again with standalone legislation that preempts state laws.
And for more on this story, I spoke with Kira Shishkin.
So I am Kira Shishkin, the CEO of Informed, which is an SMS-based news concierge for leaders in the age of information overload.
For more about Informed, Informed is the news concierge service for leaders in the age of information overload. It provides minimal, concise, and factual daily news briefings via SMS to keep you informed without the influence of bias, sensationalism, or advertisements.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So no advertisements on your news content. Try Informed. It's the news partner of Venture Daily. We are a news show. Informed sells the news, so we thought it'd be a good little partnership here.
Exactly.
So our listeners get a free trial of Informed and discounted access. Simply text the word Venture, so that's on screen here, to 844-406-INFO.
I'm already subscribed. See, you can see my phone. It sends a text every single morning. So of like the 6 news stories, a couple different news stories every single day with links to read more about it.
Okay, there we go. Nice.
So, yeah.
Pretty cool stuff. Yep. So check it out.
Yep.
Informed. Again, simply text the word Venture to 844-406-INFO. All right, let's get on to the questions.
Yep, my first question for Kira. With the Senate killing the AI regulation ban, is this the moment federal lawmakers finally feel the pressure to pass a national AI framework, or will we just see more gridlock as states charge ahead?
I think we've seen a lot of industry friendliness with the current administration. We've seen this in an unprecedented way with the inauguration, right? All the big players of large tech were there. I think the federal legislative mechanism doesn't need to be pushed by the states in order to act in the interest of sort of citizens and residents. And so I don't know if this is a push that's going to be in any way more forceful. If the federal government was aligned with regulating AI, they would have done so already. The federal government, I think, won't be pushed, but the states will be trying again.
So speaking of states, we've got 3 states. We've actually got 20 states that have already passed AI laws. But here's 3 of them that I thought were pretty interesting. Colorado, first one. Colorado legislator passes first in-nation artificial intelligence bill.
Your old state.
My home state, that's right. And why does this matter? It's the most comprehensive AI law passed by any state so far.
Okay.
Colorado is creating real rules for high-risk AI. If companies use AI to make important decisions, like who gets a loan or who gets a job, they have to check for bias, explain how it works, and tell people it's being used. It's like putting brakes and headlights on a fast new car before letting it onto the road.
I see.
Then you got Tennessee's Elvis Act. We talked about this yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yes. Or 2 days ago.
By the way, Colorado's is effective in 2026.
Okay.
Tennessee's Elvis Act became effective in July of 2024.
A year ago.
Why does this matter? It's the first law protecting voice and likeness from AI deepfakes with a special focus on artists. So named after Elvis Presley, the law cracks down on unauthorized AI-generated imitations of voices, especially in music. Given the explosion of deepfake vocals like we've talked about on the show quite a bit, especially targeting musicians, this is culturally relevant and a precedent-setting move. And then finally, New York. Cool. So New York's got the AI hiring bias law, which is just a local law in New York City. Why does it matter? It's the first law that forces algorithmic accountability in the workplace. If a company uses AI to scan resumes or score candidates, they're legally required to undergo an independent bias audit and notify applicants.
Interesting.
So it's a bold local step toward tackling algorithmic discrimination in employment. So those are just a few of the state laws. We don't have a national law yet. Of course, we talked about how Biden put an executive order a year ago. Trump basically took it down once he got into office. But we have states, and they're continuing to make laws across the country.
Right. And speaking of state AI regulations, I asked Kira, more than 20 states have passed AI laws already. How long can Congress avoid acting before the patchwork becomes a serious risk to U.S. competitiveness?
I love that you mentioned this idea of like U.S. competitiveness. There is protection of the consumer and there is the competitiveness of the industry. I think it's worth breaking down what is consumer protection. I think it's the following 3. One is privacy. The ability of a person to be able to delete data, the ability of a person to be able to not have their personal data in any way used. The second one is safety. If I'm going to ask a question that is illegal or inappropriate or in some ways, showing intent of terrorism or intent of harm, what is the role of AI? Is it to actually give me the answer? Or is it to alert the authorities? Or is it to talk me out of it and take that responsibility onto itself? And the third, and I guess there are many more than these, but I'm just kind of throwing out a couple of pillars, is copyright information. When you look at these pillars, I'm not seeing threats to industry competitiveness. I'm seeing sort of baseline standard consumer protection that we have the same protections across other industries, and I don't feel like we've lost industry competitiveness in anywhere in particular.
And for my final question with Kira, I asked him, with rising public demand for AI regulation and deep divides in Congress, is the real risk now that we get the worst of both worlds, no national standard and a fragmented mess of state-by-state rules?
Yeah, I think that's where we have the status quo right now. We have a real absence. There's a real regulatory vacuum, as I would put it, in AI regulation. It's so hard because it's evolving so quickly. So it's like what you're regulating is changing extremely fast. And there's a huge lag. There's a regulatory lag that I think we'll continue to see. It isn't ideal for anybody to have different rules across every single state, even if across different regions of states. I don't think it's the end of the world because the consumer doesn't see the impact of that. Right now, like you cannot gamble in California, but you can just go across to Nevada and you can go straight into a casino. And you as a consumer, you can do very different things just by driving 10 minutes in Reno. There might be some of that coming forward of people being able to, move geographies and fundamentally change their use of AI.
That's interesting. So will we see companies like just moving across the border to another state just so that they can kind of duck under some of those AI regulations?
Yeah, I was thinking about this recently. Utah has been a really big state like advocating for this like idea of American exceptionalism. They're having all this nuclear energy that they're wanting to focus there. And I think the governor of Utah is saying like build in Utah will be a really friendly state to
Valor Atomics.
Yeah, Valor Atomics doing a bunch of work there. And so the governor's saying like build here, we'll give you a lot of help with like deep tech, defense tech, hard tech, etc. And so maybe we can see some states popping up saying, hey, we can be a haven for AI. Our laws are very, low key. Same with Delaware with like business, laws that way, tax laws that way. So I guess we'll see, but we really thank you to Kira Shishkin for being on the show today.
All right, that's it for Venture Daily. Thank you so much for joining us. If you made it all the way to the end and you're still watching, please let us know down in the comments. We helped you get a little bit smarter today.
And thank you to Content Stack for letting us film here every single day in Austin, Texas. And if you like today's show, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or X, leave us a like, a comment, and a review. Throw us a 5-star rating if you think we earned it. And as always, we'll see you tomorrow morning here at Venture Daily.